Great. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate you joining us. My name is Isabella Perry, and I will be your moderator for this presentation. Today's presentation will be about your ongoing relationship with PJR, presented by Joseph Krolikowski, our PJR QMS and ABMS Program Manager. So some quick housekeeping. There is a Q&A portion at the top of the Teams webinar panel. You can use that for any questions you have throughout today's webinar, but there will be a Q&A at the end. All the slides and the recording will be available on our website after today's presentation. Any additional questions, please contact us through our website for any information that you need, okay? I have a quick poll I am going to run. This is just about if there's any other standards or services that you'd be interested in receiving more information about. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds here to answer that, and then I'm going to close the poll and Joe will take it away. Okay, thank you for those responses. I'm going to close that poll. And like I said, Joe will take it away discussing today's topic.
Thank you, Isabella. So our topics for today, we've kind of got this broken down into 4 distinct pieces. We're going to talk very briefly about our feelings on being your partner in your certification. We're going to segue into what happens, or what should happen rather, when things change within your company. We'll talk a little bit about the concept of short notice audits as it relates to those changes. And then we've got a section of this presentation dedicated to the dispute process, what happens when we don't agree on the outcomes of the audit. Now, as I said, PJR views itself as a partner in your certification, and we want to emphasize that from our perspective, this goes beyond the initial certification audit. We want you to keep us involved when you face challenges in your quality management system, and we want you to use the resources that we offer to get the most out of your certification effort. Now, obviously, your participation in today's webinar is an example of some of the resources that we have in that endeavor. So let's talk a little bit now about changes and what happens, or what should happen, when things change. Now, obviously, any organization faces the potential for change over the duration of their existence. Now, some changes are going to be of minimal impact. They'll end up meaning nothing in the long run. And obviously, other changes can have very dramatic impact on a company's business, on its future, etc. Now, when a change potentially is going to impact your certification, PJR needs to be informed so that we can take the proper actions in response to the change. Now, this is actually something that is established in your contract with PJR. Any contracted client is bound by our official terms and conditions. Now, those terms and conditions are found in a document titled F3, or Form 3. And if you go to PJR's website, pjr.com, if you go to the very bottom of the page, you'll find a link entitled Registration Document Download. You will find the F3 available for download at any time from that link. Now, the F3 includes obviously a lot of different provisions, a lot of different language, but as it pertains to changes, here's what it says specifically. That it is incumbent upon the organization to notify PJR in writing and in a timely fashion of material changes. Now, our requirement, that verbiage, comes from ISO 17021-1. Now, you can think of that as a set of requirements that PJR has to abide by as a certification body. So it's sort of an ISO 9001 for PJR. You can think of it that way. Now, the F3, for its part, goes on to provide a fairly complete list of what constitutes a material change. And we're going to go over that now as part of our presentation. Now, you can think of material changes as being in one of 3 categories. The first of these is the ownership of the organization the legal material change. So if you have a change of ownership, if you pivot from being a partnership to a corporation, or from a corporation to an LLC, or if you are bought out, but your new parent company retains your former company name as a DBA. All of these things need to be reported to PJR. Now, it's possible that changes of that nature could have an impact. It's possible they won't have an impact. But one of the things you have to bear in mind is that PJR, one of the requirements we're held accountable to is that we have to have a legally binding contract with all of our clients. So if we don't have the legal name right on the contract, it's not legally binding. So that, again, that can get fishy in situations where there's a DBA involved or things like that. The second category of material change is operational. Now, this one's a little bit easier to understand how this could have an impact. So this is going to include things like changes in the scope of operations, what appears or is intended to appear on your certificate, changes in your processes, changes in who the decision makers are for your company, changes in the number of employees. Now, obviously, changes of these type, these are usually going to have some impact on your certification. So again, that's operational changes. The last category can be thought of as physical changes. Now, this is going to include changes in your address. So if you've added a building, if you've removed a building, if you've moved, things of this nature, or if you've had significant damage to one of your buildings, if you've had to shut down part of your operation because you've had a fire or a flood or things of that nature. Now, obviously, these types of changes, temporary or otherwise, are usually going to bear some impact on your certification. Now, in terms of what PJR is obligated to do about a material change, as we just reviewed. Well, again, 17021 requires us to, as the standard says, take action as appropriate in response to the reported change. Now, as to what that action is going to consist of, when the action needs to take place, etc., it's going to be dependent on the nature of the change and on the impact on the certificate that's been issued. Now, obviously, some changes will be judged as having little to no impact at all, and may require no specific action by PJR. Now, almost all material changes at minimum are going to require a contract amendment to be written to capture the change and document its mutual approval by PJR and the organization. So if we're talking, for example, that you've added a building, if we're talking about a change in the legal name of the company, if we're talking about a dramatic reduction in the head count, those are usually always going to require an amendment. Now, ideally, the reported change will get assessed as part of our normal auditing cycle. So in other words, if we're scheduled already to be out there at your facility in a couple of months, well, fine. We can review that change as part of the normal auditing cycle. However, that's not always going to be possible in all circumstances. And that's where the idea of short notice audits comes in. Again, this is a requirement from 17021, where it states that PJR needs to perform audits of certified clients at short notice in response to changes. Now, again, we've transposed that verbiage into our F3, making it a binding part of our contract with our clients. Now, depending on the nature of the change, we refer to short notice audits by one of a couple possible internal titles. You may hear it referred to as a scope expansion. Now, that term is typically used when an organization is adding a new building or site to their certification, a new warehouse, that sort of thing. It can also be used in situations where your scope is expanding. If you're adding new products or new production processes that are going to impact the scope, etc. Now, the other term that we use for short notice audit is an on-site assessment or an OA audit. Now, that's kind of a catch-all for any short notice audit that isn't technically a scope expansion. Now, some of our certification schemes have their own special add-on requirements for short notice audits. Now, in the ITF, for example, they are referred to as special audits. And special audits fall under ITF rules. That's actually a misprint. That should say 6th edition, ITF rules 6th edition. And in AS 9100, they are referred to as special audits for aerospace. But the 17021-1 requirements are still in play for those assessments. Now, in terms of what happens on a short notice audit, and again, as we've indicated, they have a couple of different names, but generally they all follow the same steps as a regularly sequenced audit. Firstly, you can expect that you will receive an audit plan, just like you would for a regular audit. You should expect there to be an opening and closing meeting. You should expect that your team members are going to be interviewed, and there will be a review of company documentation. Now, the audit, the short notice audit itself, is intended to be a targeted sampling of what has changed. And so let's explore what that means. So let's talk about a site relocation. Let's say that you've moved up the street or across the country. Here are the things that we are likely going to look at during that short notice audit. We're going to look to see, did you discuss this during management review? Did you perform an internal audit at the new facility? Have you updated your documentation, your procedures, your policies, etc. for the new location? Have you updated your advertising, the contracts that you have with your customers, the equipment that you have? Has it been set up in the new location? Is it operational? Have you been performing maintenance on it? Have you, by chance, hired anybody new at this new location? Obviously, that's going to depend on how far you've moved. Did you inform your customers and other interested parties that you've moved? And then obviously, did the move result in a change to your scope of operation? So as you can see, there's a lot for us to look at here to make sure that we can still uphold your certification at the new facility. Now, in the case of an ownership change, the list of what we have to look at is a little bit shorter, but still, we're going to be looking to see, have there been any changes in the management structure or who the managers are? Have there been any changes to your processes or process controls? Have your customers been informed of this ownership change? Were there any issues with that? And again, is there an impact to the scope of operations? Last example, if you've introduced a new product or a new production process, again, we're going to look and see, did this get talked about in management review? Did it get included in the internal audit? Were the documentation updates taken care of? Again, did you set up the equipment properly? Have you done the required maintenance for your new equipment? And did you train the people who are performing the new processes or manufacturing the new products? So again, there's a kind of a specified list of things that we want to see. Now, obviously, it is always possible for there to be nonconformances in any audit activity. The exceptions obviously being stage 1 and pre-assessment. But yes, during a short notice audit, we would still issue a nonconformance. Now, any nonconformance that's issued in a short notice audit is subject to the same expectations for timing and response that we apply to our regularly scheduled audits. Now, one of the questions that we get often is, especially if there is a company name change or a relocation, the client is usually anxious to get their new certificate, as they refer to it. Well, first of all, it's important to remember that it is a certificate update, meaning that your current certificate is still valid. Your auditor is going to be required to prepare a certificate application. You should expect discussion on that certificate application while the auditor is still there to make sure that you agree with what's prepared. And then we follow our standard process for review and approval of the audit package like we would for a regularly scheduled audit. Now, obviously, wherever possible, we do endeavor to respond quickly to emergency requests for expedited certificate issuance. We definitely want to make sure that if we need to run on your behalf, that we will run. Okay, let's transition now and talk about the dispute process. This is something that's used when there is disagreement on the outcomes of the audit. Now, we have over 6,000 active certifications in a wide variety of industries and territories. And I personally think it's remarkable that despite all of those audits taking place year over year, on average, we are at about 20 disputes a year or less. So let's take a look at what happens when it is necessary to have a dispute. Now, the term dispute has no official definition in either 17021 or even the Auditing Guidance Standard 19011. Now, the term appeal is used in 17021, but that term also doesn't have an official definition. So we have to go with kind of a general understanding of what it means. Disputes and appeals are generally understood as an officially filed disagreement on the part of the auditee to one or more of the conclusions reached in the audit process. Typically, this is going to be in the form of nonconformances. Now, obviously, a dispute is going to be filed for one of two things. Either the auditor and auditee are at an impasse as to the merits of the evidence, or possibly the auditor and auditee are at an impasse as to the merits of the relevant audit criteria. I suppose it's possible that there could be disagreement on both of those points. Now, before you file a dispute, we have trained our auditors, first of all, to be forthright in sharing suspected nonconformances with our auditees, basically at the moment they're discovered. Now, it's intended that this is going to give the auditee a chance to present all available evidence. And in this way, the sides can be confident that the auditor is making as informed a decision as possible. In other words, we have everything, all of the evidence that we can get our hands on in order to know that this is the nonconformance. We also emphasize to our auditors that if all the available evidence has been seen and the nonconformance is still not fully agreeable to all parties, we've trained them to document it and move on. And you have to understand that time spent arguing the merits of a nonconformance is time detracted from the auditing process. And it's going to impact our ability to meet the audit objectives. So if you're in the midst of an audit and you've presented all the evidence and you still don't have agreement on the NCR, move on. That's what this process is for. So let's take you through the dispute process now, kind of front to back. 17021-1 requires PJR to have a documented process to receive, evaluate, and make decisions on appeals. Now, our documented process is called Pro 10, which is titled Dispute Procedure. Pro 10 is available for download anytime from PJR's website. Again, we mentioned a little bit earlier the registration document download link. You can use that to access the Pro 10 document as well. And again, that's right on pjr.com. Go to the bottom of the home page and you'll find that registration document download link. Now, your dispute process begins by reaching out to our team here at headquarters and requesting a copy of Form 217, the dispute resolution request form. Now, as is explained in the Pro 10, dispute requests are due within 15 calendar days of the end of the audit, and you do have to provide a separate F-217 for each nonconformance you are disputing. Now, at the top of the 217, there is a space for you to provide some basic information about the audit, the auditor's name, your name rather, excuse me, the auditor's name, the date that your request has been filed, and then we have a resolution request section. And there are 4 pieces of information that are requested. First of all, the certification criteria. This should be used to capture the nonconformance number that was assigned by the auditor. So if there are 10 nonconformances, we do train our auditors to number them. Tell us which nonconformance number you're disputing. Secondly, what was the finding? Now, this should be a summary or ideally a direct copy of the nonconformance that was issued by the auditor. Third, the justification for dispute request. Now, this should be a summary of why you are disagreeing with the nonconformance written by the auditor. Now, your statement needs to include any points of disagreement on the evidence, the criteria, or other relevant points. Lastly, the description of attachments. Now, this should be a summary, as detailed as you can make it, of what you have provided to substantiate your dispute. Now, this evidence can be in any format, can be a PDF, a Word document, etc. Now, once we have received the 217 from you with all of the applicable attachments, we will act to schedule a dispute hearing for you. Now, the dispute hearing includes a number of participants. Firstly, our dispute chairperson. It's going to include a representative from you, from the auditee. It's going to include the auditor who wrote the contested nonconformance. And it's going to include a dispute panel. Now, this is going to be 3 lead auditors from the scheme who will make the final decision on the disputed item. Now, each side is given ample time to present their side of the situation, and the dispute panel may have questions for both the auditee and the auditor. Now, after the dispute hearing is concluded, the dispute panel then has a private discussion and renders its final decision on the disputed items. The dispute panel's decision is final and binding, and you will receive a copy of the completed dispute decisions. Now, the final outcomes are possible in the dispute process. First of all, the disputed nonconformance may be upheld. Now, in that instance, the dispute committee has rejected your argument, and you have to respond to the nonconformance in the prescribed fashion. Secondly, it's possible that the disputed nonconformance gets overturned. Now, in that case, the dispute committee has accepted your argument and has instructed the auditor to remove the nonconformance from the official audit report. Now, you should expect to receive an updated audit report in those cases. Third, the final possibility, the disputed nonconformance is upheld, but it has been reduced or revised. Now, that's going to refer to a situation where a portion of the nonconformance is legitimate, but another portion needs to be removed. Could also be a situation where we are downgrading a major nonconformance to a minor nonconformance. It may also be that the nonconformance was warranted, but it needs to be revised in order to make more sense. Again, you should expect to receive an updated audit report in these cases. Now, in conclusion, we want our clients to think of us as a trusted partner in the certification process on audit day and beyond. We do hope you will keep us in the loop when things come up and let us use our many resources to your benefit. I'd like to invite you to tune in for one of our other webinars. We have a popular webinar on Pro 3 and the related bylaws on promotion of your certification. This covers a myriad of requirements pertaining to the advertising of your certification. So if you're newly certified and you want to make sure you're doing the right thing promoting it, this is a great webinar for you. We're also very excited to announce that we are going to be premiering a brand new webinar tomorrow, January 15th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. This is getting to know, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That's a misprint, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And that is getting to know PJ Vision, a better way to interact with Perry Johnson registrars. So again, that's going to be premiering tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. This is going to be a new webinar on our most exciting innovation in decades, and it's going to completely revolutionize the audit experience for our clients. And we do have webinars on a wide variety of other topics, things like Stage 1, ITF 16949, ISO 9001, and so forth. If you'd like to be kept informed of the latest news automatically, the best way for you to do that is to visit our website at www.pjr.com. Go to the bottom of the page and enter your email address in the provided space and click subscribe. You will be opted in for automatic updates on upcoming webinars, changes to the standard, and other helpful points of information. I do thank you all for your time and attention to our presentation today. I think we're going to try to take a look at the questions now. And let's see what we've got here. Okay, so the question portion is open. If you've not already provided your question, feel free to do so now. Okay, it would appear we have no questions today, so I'll thank everybody for their time. Again, please join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time to learn all about PJ Vision. Thank you so much.